Imagine a world where your car, your home, and even battlegrounds are all interconnected by cyber technology. That world is our reality today. From the immersed realms of digital worlds to the digital front lines of modern warfare, technology isn't just part of life, it's changing literally everything. Traditional war tactics like missiles and bombs are no longer the only means of attack. Cyber weapons, which don't even have a physical form, are now way more destructive than traditional ones. And why not? After all, a rival country's defense system can be destroyed by simply taking advantage of a minimal vulnerability in its digital network. So yes, war has transformed into something new, cyber warfare. But what does this mean for a world? Have there already been cyber wars? And what does the future hold? Could cyber warfare be the ultimate threat? Cyber war, cyber warfare, cyber attacks, digital warfare, whatever you might name it, one thing remains consistent, and it's the inevitable destruction this war brings in itself. It's not even a new phenomenon. During the Cold War, the US and Soviet Union were focused on one thing, and one thing only: developing their computer technology, and the result was cyber war. So what exactly is it? Imagine a world thought entirely in cyberspace, where computer networks become the ultimate weapons. It's where digital technologies are used for both attack and defense. But are there any steps to it? Well, yes. The process of cyber attack often follows a step of stages. It all starts with reconnaissance, gathering information about the target to identify vulnerabilities. Next is weaponization, where malware and other tools are crafted to exploit these vulnerabilities. Then the attacker delivers the malware or attack through methods like phishing or supply chain compromise. Finally, they exploit these vulnerabilities to infiltrate systems and networks, gaining access to whatever they want. And of course, in cyber warfare, attacks come in many forms. It can include anything from malware and ransomware to cyber espionage and disruption. One type of malware is ransomware, which locks the victim's files and demands payment for the decryption key. Cyber espionage, on the other hand, involves state-sponsored actors stealing sensitive data to uncover their rivals' secrets. Countries no longer need to use human espionage, but rather a well-placed rootkit can gain more information than hundreds of spies. The Panama Papers leak is a prime example of the impact of cyber espionage. The leak led to political shakeups across the world, including the resignation of the Prime Minister of Ireland and exposing secret bank accounts in Panama hidden from national governments. Then there is cyber sabotage, which can target infrastructure and cause destruction and disruption. Hacktivism is another form of cyber warfare. It's when individuals or groups use technology to promote their beliefs or speak out against injustices. In addition to hacktivism, there are distributed denial of service (DDoS) attacks, which overwhelm and shut down websites and networks. These are just a few examples of the future of cyber warfare, a new battlefield that countries and organizations have long been preparing for. Now, let's explore which of these has made the most significant advances in this race. In the year 2024, countries all around the world are racing towards the development of their cyber technologies. However, when it comes to the elite cyber armies, only a few come to mind. Israel, North Korea, Iran, and the United Kingdom have conducted some damaging cyber operations, but they are still not considered part of the major league. The real players in the world of cyber warfare are Russia, China, and the United States. Russia stands out as a dominant force, potentially even at the forefront in the realm of cyber warfare. And obviously China. The government has been accused of conducting cyber espionage against several countries, including the United States. Of course, the United States itself has a powerful presence in this arena, but how have these cyber superpowers waged war against each other? It's a game of cat and mouse, with constant effort to outsmart the competition. It's said that over 30 countries have developed offensive cyber attack capabilities. Although most of these programs are kept confidential, there is a growing concern that a secret cyber competition is already in progress. The United States intelligence reports frequently mention China, Iran, North Korea, and Russia as the primary cyber threat actors to worry about. The US has long warned that Russia has highly advanced offensive cyber programs and has conducted damaging cyber attacks on critical infrastructure networks. Likewise, the Pentagon has warned that China is actively seeking to close the gap in cyber warfare capabilities with the US. China's efforts to infiltrate US networks for valuable data aim to furnish the cyber forces with critical insights into US defense infrastructure, military positioning, logistics, and associated capabilities, potentially exploiting this knowledge in future crises. Given these developments, it's important to consider what these nations have achieved with their cyber capabilities. Let's take a step back and examine their accomplishments so far. A little bit of background. A single student is all what it started with. Robert Morris, a Cornell University student, was exploring the ARPANET in 1988. Before he knew it, it was 8 p.m. and he has just released the first computer war in history, affecting thousands of computers. It was just the start of what we know now as cyber weapons. Morris had noticed vulnerabilities in the Unix system, weak passwords and software flaws, which his worm used to self-replicate and spread. His curiosity ultimately incurred a cost of approximately $100 million to fix. This left people wondering if a study could cause this much damage. How much damage would a trained professional employed by the government cause? The answer would be found no longer after. An example of this would take us back in the spring of 2007 in Estonia. Out of nowhere, hundreds of Estonian websites started being targeted by a series of distributed denial of service attacks, which means the target actors had filled websites with lots of traffic, making the sites inaccessible to people. Everything you can think of was affected. The country's online banking, digital news media, government sites, and practically anything else with a web presence. The attacks were not isolated or random. The suspects behind these actions were Russia-based threat actors who initiated the cyber war in retaliation for the Estonian government's decision to relocate a Soviet-era statue from a central location in Tallinn. This would be the first time a foreign threat actor threatened a national security and political independence to cyber operations. But it most definitely wasn't the last one. In 2010, the US and Israel joined forces against a common adversary, Iran. The goal was to disrupt the Iranian nuclear program because they believed that if Iran managed to develop atomic weapons, it will lead to a regional war between Iran and Israel. And they started what they named Operation Olympic Games, where a war was being developed, Stuxnet. But how did it work? When Stuxnet infects a computer, it first checks whether it's connected to certain models of programmable logic controllers made by Siemens. These controllers are responsible for controlling and interacting with industrial machinery, such as Iranian centrifuges. If the worm detects no controllers, it remains inactive. However, if it finds them, Stuxnet changes the controller's programming, causing the centrifuges to spin irregularly, ultimately damaging or destroying them. While this happens, the controllers report false information to the computer, making it difficult to detect the problem until it's too late. The Stuxnet virus was highly successful. One analyst estimated that it set the program back by at least 2 years. This was the virus that made it possible to destroy machinery or even stop or start a war. This type of warfare, known as hybrid warfare, involves the use of non-military tactics in combination with conventional kinetic warfare to achieve foreign policy goals. The Russian-Ukraine cyber war. While there's hardly anyone who is unfamiliar with the Russian-Ukraine war, one aspect has been overlooked quite often: the cyber war. Cyber operations have been used against Ukraine along with military operations to immobilize government services, sabotage critical infrastructure, disrupt elections, and much more. Who or how, you may ask? Well, threat actors, including state and non-state entities, use cyber operations to weaken and sabotage social cohesion, increasing political fragmentation. All that so there could be disinformation spread about the war. If there's anything that it is a mouthpiece of what is about to go down in the near future in the world equipped with cyber warfare, it is Ukraine. Just an hour before the invasion of Ukraine by Russia on February 24th, 2022, a cyber attack using ACI-RAID wiper malware erased modems and routers from a satellite network, which interfere with military communication. At the same time, German energy company Enercon lost remote monitoring and control of 5,800 wind turbines across Central Europe. Tens of thousands of civilians in Ukraine lost internet signal for up to 2 weeks, restricting any access to reliable information. The effects of the internet outrages were felt across Europe, with at least 27,000 users impacted in Czech Republic, France, Germany, Poland, and the United Kingdom. In France alone, 9,000 subscribers lost internet, while customers reported internet outrages as far as Morocco. It was all a tactic, a cyber weapon, and Russia is not a new player in the game. This hybrid approach to warfare was foreshadowed by the combined cyber tactics used in eastern Ukraine a decade ago. That 2013 Maidan Revolution, a popular movement that pushed Ukraine closer to political alignment with the European Union and NATO, was a turning point for Russia. They began using cyber attacks to paralyze, discredit, and distract political opponents. Russia launched distributed denial of service attacks to offline the Maidan movement in 2013 and took down government computer networks and communications in 2014. This was a distraction from Russian troops that were in Crimea just days before an internationally denounced referendum on annexation. So yes, the world of cyber warfare is evolving at an alarming pace, far beyond what most of us can imagine. Governments are pouring in resources to strengthen their intelligence agencies, while individuals are launching massive attacks against their rival countries. The stakes are high, and the consequences of cyber attack can be catastrophic. More and more institutions have been victims of cyber war, of course, because it is cyber. It is possible for one side to launch attacks against another without a direct physical confrontation. Russia, the country that has been most involved in cyber warfare, was in no way behind even before the Ukrainian war. One such attack took place in 2019, when Russian intelligence services apparently injected malicious code into a software update that affected at least 18,000 devices, including those at US government agencies. This allowed the hackers to gain deep and broad access to sensitive information for up to 14 months before the malware was finally contained by Microsoft FireEye in 2020. But that's not all. More recently, in 2022, Chinese operators purposely launched a cyber attack during the visit to Taiwan by a prominent US government official. The attackers paralyzed Taiwanese government's websites and projected anti-US government and anti-Taiwan messaging on screens throughout the island. Another example is the use of Pegasus spyware by authorities in certain countries between 2018 and 2021 to track and closely monitor politicians, civil society activists, and journalists involved in the Western Sahara conflict. North Korean hackers have also been active in their attempts against South Korea. In August and September 2023, organized North Korean hackers targeted South Korea's shipbuilding sector. Their plan involved targeting the shipbuilder system to their information technology maintenance computers. They achieved this by sending phishing emails to staff members, intending to trick them into revealing sensitive information. In an even more recent cyber attack, Iranian hackers launched a campaign against Israel's railroad network. They sent out emails that looked like they came from legitimate sources, but they were actually designed to trick people into giving away their login credentials. Once the hackers had access to the network, they were able to cause disruptions and even infiltrate the electrical infrastructure. The hackers responsible for the attack were part of a group known as the Cyber Avengers, also called Ballistic Bobcat. They had already breached the network of over 30 Israeli companies using tools like the sponsored backdoor to exploit vulnerabilities, steal data, and disrupt operations. This kind of attack is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to cyber warfare. One group of hackers, known as the BlackTech group, has been causing chaos both in the US and Japan. They have been targeting a range of sectors, from government and industrial to technology and telecommunications, by manipulating the firmware of routers to install malware and backdoors. This campaign, named Arcane Door, began in November 2023 and has kept causing chaos in the next year. Africa was yet another target of another government. Chinese hackers started targeting telecommunications service providers in an ongoing espionage campaign since at least November 2022. The group, known as Daggerfly, has been active since 2014 and has targeted domestic human rights, pro-democracy advocates, and national neighboring China. The campaign has targeted at least one African telecom company and two subsidiaries of the Middle Eastern telecom firm. This demonstrates how the threat of cyber warfare is becoming more serious than ever as we depend more on technology. That means, unfortunately, we now live in a world where large-scale cyber attacks could trigger a nuclear response. This may sound like a scene from a science fiction movie, but its potential reality outlined in the Pentagon 2018 Nuclear Posture Review. The review suggests that US can only consider using nuclear weapons in extreme circumstances to defend its interests of the United States or its allies and partners. While cyber attacks are not specifically mentioned, officials have stated that large-scale cyber attacks could warrant a nuclear response. Policies like this are now blurring the line between nuclear and conventional warfare, and some experts worry that it could even make nuclear war more likely. The question remains, will the threat of nuking a country for pulling off a large cyber attack serve as a deterrent? Only time will tell, but it makes you compare this to another form of war. Cyber warfare appears to be more sophisticated, low-key, but no less devastating from a Cold War, in which strong states with cutting-edge technology actively pursue one another. The recent allegations by the US government against TikTok are now part of this broader issue. According to the FBI director, the Chinese government is apparently using TikTok to control data collection on millions of users or to compromise personal devices. These allegations was made in the light of the US growing concerns that China's cyber development and hacking groups have been increasingly targeting US critical infrastructure and stealing sensitive data. This is not far from the truth, but the US has also been striking back equally. The US sees China's cyber activities, including the potential exploitation of TikTok, as part of a broader effort by China to become the world's greatest superpower. There are fears that in a potential conflict over Taiwan, China could use its cyber capabilities to blind and paralyze US systems. This issue is just one small part of an ongoing cyber espionage and warfare between the two countries. The global internet is being questioned by countries other than the United States. Russia and China, for example, are working hard to build their own internet infrastructure. They are using this initiative, which is sometimes referred to as the Splinternet, to combat cyber warfare and maintain control over their cyber sovereignty. But what even is cyber sovereignty? Well, it's when the state control over the internet within national borders. China has been leading the charge on this initiative, having first introduced the concept in a white paper on cyberspace in 2010. The paper emphasized the need for countries to respect each other's rights to choose their own path of cyber development and internet public policies. Since then, China has actively promoted this concept through various international forums, including the United Nations. Russia has also been actively involved in this initiative, particularly through its cooperation with China. The two countries have signed several bilateral agreements, including a cybersecurity treaty in 2015 and an international treaty on managing illegal online content in 2019. These agreements have focused on exchanging information and cooperating with the law enforcement to investigate cases involving the use of information and communications technologies for terrorist and criminal purposes. But then there is the fact that China and Russia's creation of separate internet infrastructure may have some unwanted implications for global internet governance and the free flow of information. It could lead to a cutoff from the global village that has been created, leaving people isolated from the rest of the world. So, is the only solution to stop cyber war from creating separate internet spaces for each country? With all these advancements in cyber weapons, there has also been a rise in cyber defense technology. One of the key advancements in cyber warfare technologies is the integration of artificial intelligence and machine learning, which can analyze a huge amount of data with quite a lot of speed. This also makes them quite helpful in threat detection, network monitoring, and attack simulation. Then there is behavioral biometrics, which reviews human behavior patterns like typing, mouse movements, and facial recognition to detect potential cyber threats and enhance security measures. That's not all. A security model known as Zero Trust Architecture is also being implemented to prevent lateral movement and data breaches by limiting access to sensitive information. This model assumes that network and systems are compromised and requires all users and devices to be authenticated and authorized before accessing any resources. However, with these advancements come new threats. Obviously, the cyber terrorist groups often hired by the government are all expected to adopt more advanced tactics such as APTs, advanced persistent threats. They would do whatever it takes to maintain long-term access to the system and carry out espionage and other disruptive activities. There is a chance that ransomware attacks could become even more disruptive than they are now, as hackers are advancing their technology. Looking ahead is critical to understand that foreign hackers can use the development of technologies such as 5G, quantum computing, and artificial intelligence, AI, to orchestrate increasingly complex attacks and difficult to detect. To stay ahead of these threats, countries around the world are investing heavily in cybersecurity. They're creating national cybersecurity agencies whose duties include developing strong national cybersecurity policies, protecting vital infrastructure, organizing responses to cyber attacks, defining cybersecurity best practices, raising professional cybersecurity awareness, and strengthening cybersecurity expertise. As we look into the future, it's clear that cyber warfare is not going away. With all this in context, it's not hard to imagine that if a cyber war breaks out, the results will be devastating, disabling water systems, power grids, communication networks, and much, much more. That's a world without basic necessities like water, electricity, and communication. Still, national governments around the world are seeking to attract and train hackers to attack and infiltrate these opponents, digital networks, and devices. The US government alone is looking for over 50,000 hackers in the next few years. They're even considering loosening physical requirements and marijuana use exclusions for new hackers hires. Surely, the government must be desperate. But other countries are also engaging in an armed race, stockpiling weapons in the form of zero-day attacks. They exploit vulnerabilities in a software. Our security is exposed in a way that it had never been before. Even an individual is exposed to a range of risks that we are not yet fully able to understand. Countries will be able to escalate conflicts more quickly than ever before. The problem is that these programs are often developed in secret, with little oversight and accountability, which can make it difficult to know what's really going on. With no clear rules of engagement is a situation that could easily spiral out of control. But all of this isn't even the most disturbing part. What makes this entire cyber war much dangerous is that it is now taking the shape of a nuclear weapon. Not literally, but quite similarly. Nations are silently infiltrating each other's infrastructure, planting digital time bombs like hidden chess pieces on the board. It's a game of psychological warfare, where the mere presence of these dormant threats influences strategic calculations. Cyber warfare is here to stay, and the stakes are higher than ever before. From the shadows of espionage to the forefront of geopolitical tensions, cyber warfare is reshaping the landscape of conflict in ways that it has never been before. It's as if a new gun has been invented and a new era has started. Given the lessons from our history, the forward seems doubtful. Yet, the battle to control cyberspace rages on.